I chose the name Art of Nillness for a lot of reasons. First being, it is actually an art in spirituality to become aware, to be aware, to to be in this movement. It is an art. It cannot be worded out. It cannot be reasoned with. As it is an art to paint, and when a true artist is painting, it just flows. So to be in this movement is just like that. It's to be in the flow, to be in the flow of life, and there is no way the art of nillness can be corrupted. The actual meaning of it, the actual perception of it. Because when people relate themselves to words, they would have interpretations of it. But when I say the art of nillness, that means using what is not existing to live on a day-to-day basis. And that really boggles a lot of people when they try to interpret it, but it cannot be understood by this mind. The mind has its place, but it does not have the capacity to exist outside of its information ecosystem. And when I say the art of nillness, that's very deep. It's only people who are really serious about self-awareness, understanding what the mind is, and having that yearning to go beyond it, will actually try to first understand what the mind is and then try to go beyond it. And when I say to go beyond the mind, that is not something which means that mind is an utter waste. It is not a waste. It's the most beautiful creation that has been embedded in human beings, and that's something that cannot be discarded. You can't discard it. It just comes as part of human. And the true meaning of going beyond the mind is to really see what the mind is about. When you see something for what it is, there's no interpretation in between, there's no filter in between. You just see. You're listening to me talk right now. But if you interpret me as to what I'm talking, who this person is, where is he from, then you would not be truly be listening to me. It would still be your mind that's doing its thing. So when there's that true observation of what the mind is, when you really see what the mind is, it is actually not different from you. And usually the perception is that we are thinking. But the thinking and you is not different. It's really a false way to put it, that you are thinking. That means there are two. All this false interpretations that we have had for a long time now has led us to misunderstand spirituality for what it is. And people actually live in this illusion of understanding. And the true spirituality is something that cannot be understood by this mind. It cannot be. Because the mind functions with its contents. The mind's contents is what people get really lost in. They just cannot get out of it. And those contents have been there since our childhood. So many things to that. Those contents is what moves you on a day-to-day basis. But those contents is not the actual entity that is there as a human being. First, there is usefulness of being a human being, and this true purpose of being a human being. But when it comes to the whole reality, there is no meaning to that. We humans live, we humans die, it doesn't make a difference to reality. Someone sitting in a different galaxy does not even care about what is happening here because they cannot see what's happening here. But there is a union in between this, where this movement and the movement across the universe and this existence is right here. This may really be hard to understand, but this is true. Right now, this moment is where it all is. When a person comes to the depth of this, there is no time for that person. You need time to think, to remember, to plan, and everything else. But when you are here, when you're just here, there is no time. There's so much beauty to that. And even when it comes to thinking, the past memories that we have, the past experiences that we have, that we keep referring back to, it exists because there is time in it. And time does not exist in this moment. So when a person comes to that realization that being here, right here, is timeless, and when there's a really, really deep perception of that, not experience as a human being, but really a deep perception of much more than what a human is, time really ceases to exist in that moment. But again, we need time to think, to live as a human being, to survive, to go about doing things in the world. But I would say subtlety is another name for spirituality, because all these subtle realizations that we have has a big impact on our journey in spirituality. And these subtle realizations, and there's not just one subtle realization, there's a lot of subtle realizations that keep happening when a person begins his journey of spirituality. And that realization only happens when the person has some qualities or builds those qualities, which are very innate, to be honest. They are very innate qualities that each human being comes with. But because since our childhood, since we were born, we have been raised by so many people, we have heard so many people talk, that we tend to forget. And we tend to forget that those are their voices, those are their interpretations, and we as a person have the same interpretations, but we get lost in their interpretation so much that we end up imbibing all that into our day-to-day lives, and just days after days and years pass and decades pass, we still don't realize that it is not our voice, that it is not our meaning that we derive out of it. It is not our interpretation. There's no individuality in existence, but when it comes to living as a human being, there is an individuality which has gotten corrupted by other people's influences. And when we see that, and when we actually see that we have been influenced by so many things in this world, in the time that we have lived and the time that we have been living now, those influences need to be worked out. If you don't work them out, they are going to be there, running in the background all the time. And that's going to impact a lot of your decisions, a lot of your experiences of what it truly means to be here. You may live in the illusion that you're here, but if that illusion is coming because the mind is telling you that you're here. That itself is a very, very it's a very tricky way of what the mind does to keep itself alive. We don't want it to be dead, but the mind is something that's constantly going to be there with you, and it's all about being in harmony with it. Or to rather say, put it in another way, for the mind to be in harmony with the reality. These words are really words are of human creation, that's why it's very limited. It cannot be universal. So I as a person use words to convey information that I want to share with the world, but these words are themselves limited. In this video, if I'm talking about a specific word or a set of statements in one specific way, those could be interpreted in a different way if I talk about them in different videos for a different context. So there's a lot of permutation and combination there, and that's why the mind just gets a grip on it, because it needs information to live, to thrive. And that's why most people get lost. They get lost in the contents of the mind, they get lost in the activities of the mind, that they just do not know what lies outside of it. Outside of it meaning not that there are two partitions there, but outside of it as in this moment when this mind doesn't exist, there's presence. That's all there is to spirituality. But to come to this point, the work that a person needs to do to get all those patterns out, to get all those negativity out, to get all those influences out, it really takes a lot of attention to see that the mind has corrupted all the moments that we really like. We do really like those moments that we have lived, but the mind has actually corrupted them with interpretations. So when we see a sunset, or when we see a sunrise, there's a little moment where you are in awe of it, but then again the mind comes and says it's very beautiful. That's where it takes a lot of presence from you. I mean, there's no need to be against the mind. This is not that we are against the mind or anything like that, but the mind has its place, and they are actually not two different things. When we go into the depth of it, they're actually not different, and I will be going into depth of it in the future videos. But attention is something that one needs to become very thorough in, and get that skill if they don't have. It is not even a skill, but it is a quality. It's a quality that is innate in some people. It is very strong in some people because they are sensitive, and to some people who have less sensitivity to things, to people, to themselves, they have lost those qualities, those innate qualities, but they are there. So when they come to realization that those qualities are still there, and they work out their patterns, their thinkings, their so-called personalities, in the end what comes out is there is nothing. And when you see that, when you keep working them out, there's a deep realization that whatever a human being comes with, whatever we have worried out, whatever we think, whatever we experience, it's actually our derivation of the reality. But the reality has got nothing to do with it. The reality is just there. And it is going to be there irrespective of we humans being alive or dead. It doesn't even matter. But for that attention to come in, the quality of attention, observation, or you may call it any other word, that that depth of observation is what is going to take you out of your mind and see that there's a reality outside of it. When a thought comes and you see that there's a thought, and you really observe it and let it flow, whatever the thought is. And when this becomes a habit of how to see the thoughts when they come, that itself will give a person that beginning to become sensitive again, which they have lost amidst all this madness in the world. And when that sensitivity comes in to look, not to look with your eyes, but to look within, that's the most powerful thing that is there for a human being to do. That's the most powerful thing for a human being to do. It's a human doing to look, but there's also this paradox where the looking is not done by the human because it's within. There's so much beauty to that. Our emotions, our feelings, our experiences, our thoughts, our likes, our dislikes, you name it. All these things are coming out of information. When you really look at it with depth, and when you start to live deeply, you will come to an observation that all these are human creations and all these are creations of the mind. All the life that you have lived, all the information that you possess in your mind, that is the meaning that you give to yourself. But the reality lies outside of it. And I have named this channel The Art of Nillness, and I will be expressing myself to spread the awareness of reality through this name, The Art of Nillness, because it's actually an art to observe, to look without the contents of the mind. And I say the art of nillness because when you have that nillness in the background and not your mind's contents in the background, that becomes an art to live in itself. So when you have the art of nillness on a day-to-day basis, and when there's that deep perception that you are a creation and you are the creator, that is something. And the art of nillness has that capacity for every human being to realize this fact. The mind itself is a creation, but it also keeps creating. We humans are a creation, but we keep creating. The plant is a creation, it keeps creating. There's this constant creation that's going on everywhere. There's also deep within all those that there is a creator that is void of all these creations, a creator that exists everywhere but is only visible, I would say, creator that is always there in the background but is void of all the creations, and only comes into the human perception when when the mind ceases to exist. In that moment, that creator is void of everything. But the beauty of the creator is that he is everywhere. That is everywhere. And it's as if there's a dance going on between the creator and the creation. Isn't that beautiful? And it's constantly happening. If you are observant, you would not miss it, you would not want to miss it. But we go on living our lives as if it's all about the mind. The mind has its place, but we need it to survive in all these activities. But there's a deeper essence to life that is beyond the mind.